வணக்கம் நேயர்களே, மீண்டும் ஒரு வெளிச்ச நிகழ்ச்சியில் சந்திக்கின்றோம். இன்று எங்களுடன் திரு அன்டன் பிலிப் அவர்கள் கலந்து கொள்கின்றார். இவர் போரினால் பாதிக்கப்பட்டோருக்கும் மனித உரிமைக்கான நடுவத்தின் தலைவர். அதே நேரம் தொலைத்தொடர்பு வழியாக எங்களுடன் பேராசிரியர் ஜூட் லால் பெர்னாண்டோ அவர்கள் யூனிவர்சிட்டி ஆஃப் டப்ளினில் பேராசிரியராக இருப்பவர், அவரும் இணைந்திருக்கின்றார் தொலைத்தொடர்பு வழியாக. உங்கள் இருவருக்கும் வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம்.
குட் ஈவினிங் ஜூட்.
Good evening.
Good evening. Anyway, even though it is midnight in Ireland, you are participating through the conference video conferencing. But we are very grateful. A lot of things you are doing, we will discuss in the part of our discussion. இன்றைய இந்த வெளிச்ச நிகழ்ச்சியில் நாங்கள் ஒரு முக்கியமான நபர் திரு ப்ரொஃபஸர் ஜூட் லால் அவர்கள். அவர் ஒரு சிங்கள சமூகத்தை சேர்ந்தவராக இருந்தாலும் ஈழத்தமிழர்களுடைய பிரச்சனையினுடைய வடிவங்களிலே, இனப்படுகொலை தொடர்பான விடயங்களிலே மிகவும் அக்கறையாக தமிழர் கருத்துக்களை சர்வதேச ரீதியாக கொண்டு செல்கின்றவர். அந்த அடிப்படையிலே அவர் ஒரு முக்கியமான ஒரு நீதி விசாரணை ஒன்று உருவாக்கியிருந்தார்கள். அதாவது அதற்கு பேர் பெர்மனன்ட் பீப்புள் ட்ரிபியூனல் என்ற விடயம் டப்ளினிலே தீர்ப்பாயம் ஒன்றை உருவாக்கி பல விடயங்களை சர்வதேச ரீதியாக கொண்டு சென்றார்கள். அது மாத்திரமல்ல, இந்த தமிழ் மக்களுக்கு நடைபெற்ற இனப்படுகொலை தொடர்பாக பல்வேறு மொழிகளிலே அதை ஆவணப்படுத்தி உலகம் பூராக உள்ள மனித உரிமை ஆர்வலர்கள், நாடுகள் தொடர்பான விடயங்களிலே தொடர்ச்சியாக பணியாற்றுகின்றவர்கள். அந்த அடிப்படையிலே அண்மையிலே, அதாவது சென்ற 17, 18, 19 தேதிகளிலே லத்தின் அமெரிக்கா நாடான ஈக்குவடோர் என்ற நாட்டிலே, அந்த நாட்டின் தலைநகரிலே முக்கியமான அரசியல் தலைவர்கள், அந்த நாட்டின் ஜனாதிபதி உட்பட பலரையும் சந்தித்து ஒரு முக்கியமான கருத்து அரங்கத்தை உருவாக்கியிருந்தார்கள். அந்த 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 கருத்தரங்கிலே கனடாவில் இருக்கக்கூடிய போரினால் பாதிக்கப்பட்டோருக்கும் மனித உரிமைக்கான நடுவத்தின் தலைவரான திரு அன்டன் பிலிப் அவர்களும் அந்த அந்த நிகழ்ச்சிகளிலே பங்கு பெற்றிருந்தார்கள். ஈழத்தமிழர் சார்பான ஒரு முக்கியமான சந்திப்பிலே நாங்கள் அது தொடர்பாக பேச இருக்கின்றோம். முதலில் நாங்கள் ஜூட், what we wanted to know about your trip to Ecuador, recent trip to Ecuador, and you are the one organized the trip, and Anton Philip also one of the participants for that event. Can you elaborate what is the purpose of that visit and what you guys were doing in that country?
And the other countries too.
The other countries also, other Latin American countries?
Yeah, for the last 7 years, after the Mullawaikal massacre, the whole focus of the Tamil activists has been on mobilizing Europe and United States to deliver justice to the Tamils. But our understanding here is that these are the powers, mainly the British and the American states, are the powers who are responsible for dismantling of the 2002 peace process between the Tamil Tigers and the Sri Lankan state, and after which orchestrating the war against the Tamil Eelam state. So our position is that we cannot expect justice for the Tamils from the perpetrators of the crimes committed against the Tamils. That is why we focused on the progressive countries in Latin America and to appeal to them to adopt a principled position, an ethical political position regarding the Tamil struggle, because the other powers I mentioned have not adopted a principled position, and they cannot adopt a principled position because they are complicit in the massacre of the Tamils. So the whole purpose of the visits to Latin American countries was to tell the truth about the Tamil struggle. It is a national liberation struggle, and also to raise the awareness both within the government circles in Latin America, progressive social movements in Latin America, regarding the history of the Tamil liberation struggle and how it was militarily destroyed within the period of 2007 and 9, and how after 2009, through the UNHRC mechanisms, there have been major attempts by the same powers like the US and the British to cover up the crimes by entrusting the responsibility to the Sri Lankan state to carry out a domestic investigation rather than an independent international investigation. Now, this was the time that we were talking peace. This was the time that we were talking about an interim administration for 5 to 10 years. This was the time that neither the Sinhalese nor the Tamils wanted war. This was the time that there was a sense of shared sovereignty. This was the time that there was balance of power. This was the time that the Tamils could come to the south without fear, and the Sinhalese could go to the north with respect to the Tamils. Okay? But it was during this time that the US comes to Trincomalee Harbor with 30 high-profile naval officers from the Pacific Command in Hawaii and carries out a study. The study was how to execute the future war. And the report came out in Paul Moorcraft's book, which came out recently. This is very clearly profiled. There were several clear suggestions that were made. First, if you want to win the war, you have to take the area surrounding the Trincomalee Harbor, Sampur, Muttur area. Second, you need to upgrade the military. Third, you need to upgrade weaponry, including cluster munitions. Okay? And you could see this was the first step to change the balance of power. So in allocation of responsibility towards genocide of the Tamils, it is very crucial to understand how the US directly changed the balance of power, aiding the Sri Lankan state. Now, the Tamil resistance movement had stopped genocide by creating their own state. And by empowering the Sri Lankan state, the US very clearly let the Tamil state to be destroyed and genocide to be completed. Now, what happened after that? You could see the US also radically intervened to put pressure on the EU to ban the Tamil Tigers in 2006. And Sri Lankan Foreign Minister Mangala Samaravira has acknowledged it several times. Even 2 weeks ago, he wrote a letter to Mahinda Rajapaksa saying, look, it is me who went to Washington, spoke to Condoleezza Rice, Nicholas Burns, to speak to some of the EU countries who did not want to ban the Tigers and put pressure on those countries to ban the Tigers. And he clearly says it's by banning the Tigers that most of their funding sources and most of their facilities were stopped. At the same time, he says that it is Ranil Wickremesinghe who led the international campaign against the tigers. And also, it is during Chandrika's period in 2007 that the Sri Lankan state entered into a military agreement with the US. Now, what about China and India? Now, the US gave a list of weapons. And as you know, China is a cheap market from goods ranging from needles to aeroplanes now. And the new government in 2007 took this shopping list of weapons, first to New Delhi and to Beijing. They also went to Pakistan. They also went to Slovakia. They also went to Israel. They also went to many Eastern European countries. But the main job was done by the British and the American powers. There's a structural connection, military connection, strategic connection. And India is also a partner in it. But China has a commercial connection. China does business. So it is with this perspective that the judges allocated main responsibility to the USA and to Britain. Historically also speaking, they are especially the British, who created the unitary state structure, historically speaking. So it is this, when you go to Latin America, what we say, to tell you honestly, makes perfect sense. Sometimes it is difficult for us to convince this to some of the Tamils, but the Latin American people who have struggled for centuries against the Americans and the Spaniards, and in Argentina against the British, they understand it within a matter of few seconds. Wow. Now, when we met the Ecuadorian parliamentarian who is the president of the Human Rights Commission, when I mentioned Trincomalee, she said, enough. That's enough. I understand the story. That's enough. You don't need to tell me more. But it's difficult, unfortunately, for some of us who live in the English world to get this point. That is why Latin America is very important for us.
Professor, one more question. The recent past, some countries they gained the independence. Kosovo, South Sudan, Aceh in Indonesia, and East Timor. These countries actually they gained their independence through UN. Now, what we are talking about is even though you are putting this Britain and American government as the complicit for the genocide, but these are the two countries in the permanent Security Council. They are permanent members of the Security Council. So, what is the options Tamil people have? Because these are the people controlling the whole world now. And without their help, we won't be able, that's the feeling they have, we won't be able to do anything. And your experience in Latin America is not very much known to Tamil people. Yeah, some of those things you are mentioning in this interview, it's really new to a lot of Tamil people. So how they have to see that in a different light, because right now everything is moving towards the West designed solution. Even the elected parliamentarians in Sri Lanka, they are working on a new constitution and thinking that everything will be solved. So now what is your future plan on this? Because you did a lot of work, we know that, but what is our future plan? How we are going to tackle all these issues? Because big changes they are making through the constitution. You think they will deliver anything through the constitutional change back home?
It's very clear. We need to understand there's a very clear agenda. Now, this is the second phase of genocide. Second phase of genocide is to little by little absorb the Tamils into the unitary state structure by so many means and call it reconciliation. And that is the biggest trap at the moment. It's very unfortunate, I mentioned this before, that even some Tamils in the island seem to say, well, it's great that at least the Tamil national anthem is sung in Tamil. But you know, before Rajapaksa, since the so-called independence, the Tamil version of the Sinhala national anthem was there. Okay? And some really, you know, are happy TNA becoming the opposition. Now, as you know, TULF was also in the opposition in the end of 70s. And it was under TULF, when TULF was in the opposition, that you could see the pogroms took place and TULF was totally helpless. Okay? So Sri Lankan parliamentary system, Sri Lankan constitution is a Sinhala supremacist constitution. Sinhala parliament is a Sinhala supremacist parliament. And it's really a house of slavery. And this is why the 60-year-old Tamil struggle, first through non-violence, violent means, second phase in the militant phase, evolved. So what we have to think is that, you know, what is being offered is a form of slavery, a form of subjugation. It's happening in different ways. The real issues have been sidelined or hidden. The real issue is that the Tamil people are being forced to give up their national sovereignty, their collective identity, even the word Tamil Lela. And false issues have been created. Should we not sing the anthem in Tamil or not? This is the debate now. Should we accept the UNHRC resolution or not? This is the debate now. So a lot of false issues have been created. Should we go as TNA to the committees that are forming the new constitution or not? These are false questions. And we are being given, you know, false choices, which have got nothing to do with the people whose lands are being occupied, whose lands are being bulldozed. During the last 7 years, at least 4,000 Sinhala families have been settled only in the Northern Peninsula. So none of the things that are happening nor in Colombo has an impact on the acquisition of land in the Tamil Lela region. And high security zone continues to be. And at least 12,500 acres in the Northern Peninsula alone are still under military control. There is a plan. While talking about constitutional change, there's a clear plan to settle at least 50,000 families of Sinhala soldiers. Okay? While there are domestic mechanisms that are being created, while the Tamil Sinhala national anthem is being sung in Tamil, at least 16,500 forest lands in north and east have been destroyed. These figures are given by environmental. In Vavuniya district alone, 5,000 forest lands have been destroyed. So what we have to see is that false choices have been given to us through the form of reconciliation, through the form of domestic mechanism, through the form of Geneva resolutions, while time is being taken to do the rest of the genocidal process. That is why we have to change the course of action.
Professor, I have two more questions before we let you go. One of the question is how Latin American countries can help our situation, because what we notice that they also look like they have their own struggles, and how they can help us, because we are going towards that direction, how we are going to get any help to resolve our issue.
There are a number of things. Some of these countries, their governments have a huge people's movements behind them. And it's very important. And these governments also have fought against dictatorships. And then, to some extent, Ecuador you fight, and then Nicaragua to some extent. And Argentina, of course, you could say it's a right-wing government, but there's a huge memory of killing of people during the dictatorship. Now, the first thing is, as I said, these governments, if we work with them, and especially the social movements who have formed some of these governments and political parties, if we work with them, they will get very clearly the meaning of the Tamil struggle and the importance of supporting it. Okay, and one of the concrete outcomes of working in Latin America has to be the Latin American governments should take a principled position in the UN, a principled position with the UN. No, principled position means a position that would not go along with the British and the American axis, as well as the Chinese and the Indian axis. Okay, because the US is advancing more and more in the Indian Ocean and in Asia that China is encircling or expanding its sphere of influence. And it's because of that India is joining with the US to encircle China. Now, in that, the Tamils have become the victims. That is why we have to look for a third axis, a principled axis. Now, if we don't focus on that axis, we will contribute to ongoing genocide. If at least one country, Latin America, publicly states in the UN, well, there is a genocide happening, it is supported by the imperial powers, that will have a ripple effect. So for that to happen, we have to work with the people on the ground who form the governments. Now, this is not possible in Britain. This is not possible in the USA. I think the Canadians have to decide, the Tamils in Canada have to decide how they should, put forward that agenda. It's the responsibility, and we have to find, spaces within these countries, which are really, forming help to mobilize this third force. So this is what we are expecting in future if we succeed.
Professor, I have we know we are coming in towards our end of the show. Even though you born in a Sinhalese family, you came from Sri Lanka. Right now, you are holding the freedom struggle flame higher than most of us. Really, we appreciate that. But to do all these kind of work, your time, your effort, I heard that you have translated a lot of our the document regarding genocide in Japanese language, Italian language, many different languages. And I have seen a lot of books translated into Spanish and distributed in all over Latin America. Now, how are you supported to do all these things? How, because it is very difficult these days to do all these things without any support. How do you manage that one?
No, the basic support, I must tell you, it's the moral support. One example. Now, as a university professor, I'm supposed to travel to some countries for lectures, for conferences, and for academic exchange, and that's one thing. And then when I had to go to Korea for some conferences, I made use of that opportunity to show the shorter, updated version of Channel 4 film, and also discuss how the People's Tribunal, ruled that it's a genocide in universities and among human rights activists who are working against militarization of the Korean Peninsula. And when they saw Channel 4, they got really, really shocked. And then we discussed, if there is a conflict in the Korean Peninsula, it will end up even the same way as it ended up in Muliwaikal. So the groups that gathered said, what should we do? And I simply said, could you translate this report into Korean? So there were 18 groups and individuals who took about 5 to 6 months. They shared pieces. So it's an act of solidarity which is being generated by moral support. And of course, you have to work on it. It doesn't come up. And the same with the indigenous people in Latin America. But on the other hand, you cannot really, moral support. At the same time, sometimes you have to convert this moral support to financial support. Now, as you might have heard, 2 tribunals, they were massive tribunals. We had to get at least 30 eyewitnesses of the last phase of the war from the Pacific Ocean, from Africa, from Europe, from the States. It's a massive cost. The judges from all the continents. We didn't have a single NGO or a government funding us. And the Dublin Tribunal was supported by students. Dublin Tribunal was supported by students, trade unions, anti-war groups who opposed the war on Iraq and Afghanistan and on Palestine. This was our strength. Okay? But when we came to the Bremen Tribunal, when we put the international complicity, especially when we use the words that it will really investigate the British-American complicity, then even some in the diaspora opposed us. And they said, no way, we can't do that. And I must tell you, we still owe money to Anton Philip. Okay? Because I promised him, yes, we will pay the ticket. Could you please, Anna, come? He came within a matter of 3 days, but we couldn't pay him the ticket money. Okay? And we are still in debt about 20,000. Okay? Borrowed from individual friends and borrowing and paying loans. And even in the case of the Latin American trip, it was not an easy task. I think the Center for War Victims and Human Rights and the parents, organized by Anton, looked after the expenses there. And then Malati, who traveled 30 hours from Auckland in New Zealand, in 2 transits, she paid her own ticket. And the Norwegian tech, and then in Germany, and Puni Selva from London. There were individuals, some groups who gave their, might. So there's no fixed financial resource. But we put the action forward and then invite people. If you think this action is worthwhile, please support. So that has been the line. But I don't say it's an easy path. But at the same time, there's millions of dollars spent in London, I know, in Canada, on so many campaigns. But how much these campaigns generate some effective political result is another question. We're trying to build from below. So that's something that we would like to keep on to. We means the group that organized the Bremen Tribunal and the Dublin Tribunal, the Irish Forum for Peace in Sri Lanka, National Human Rights Association, and very committed Tamil diaspora activists in Canada, in London, in Germany, in Norway, and in other parts of the world, in New Zealand, in Australia, in India.
Professor, I think we have come to the end of the show. Thank you very much. Now it is well late in the night, almost in the early morning in Dublin. Thank you very much. Really, we appreciate your effort. I wish you the best of luck on all these efforts. And the Tamil people will appreciate your work once they know what is happening and what you are doing. If you miss anything to tell us, I give you another minute.
That's fine. That's fine. I just the only request is to think differently rather than expecting a solution from the powers who are complicit, who are directly involved in the massacre on the genocide of the Tamils, and they continue to do so. All what they have been doing and they are doing is marking time to complete the next phase of genocide through massive structural changes. So we need to find the third way. That's my main request.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good night or good morning. Thank you.